This is Design Safe Radio, where natural hazards researchers strive to make our society more resilient to everything nature throws at us.
Talking about the 2024 hurricane season, what were those deployments like? How was it like working with the team last year? And can you tell us about some of the data you gathered and things that you learned?
Yeah, so Helene was kind of special in that regard that so I remember on the Saturday before, so Helene made landfall on a Thursday, and the Saturday before, people were still kind of like, maybe it's coming, maybe it's not, and maybe it's big, maybe it's not. On Sunday, it became a little bit more clear, and we actually started talking with NEER about possibly mobilizing. And so on Monday, we had a first more formal meeting with NEER leadership and possible participants, if it would make sense to mobilize for this. And one key point that came out for us, why this actually became a big deployment or made a contribution, why it became a big deployment, was that at that time, it seemed to be more likely that Hurricane Helene would actually impact a zone of the Florida West Coast that is, first of all, close to UF, and secondly, is an area that we had actually collected data over the last 2 years for other research purposes, for other research projects. So we kind of knew the sites. We had maybe an idea of more vulnerable spots, as well as kind of different environmental conditions that we would be interested in. So at that point, with hurricanes, you have an approximately idea where it's going, but you don't really know exactly where it's going. So if you want to deploy before the storm, you're always running in the risk that you are still in the wrong spot, right?
Right.
However, in that case, we made the decision based on that colleagues who are more involved in actually the prediction of the hurricanes, they said, well, you may not be right in the center spot, but that area will very likely be impacted. And we felt that was good enough to make a first attempt to actually getting sensors in front of the hurricane, and then we can at least demonstrate how this could work. And since this was also kind of close to UF, that allowed us to have a home base, right, that is not too far away, and then we can practically retrieve to fairly easily, because you also don't want to be, during the hurricane, another person in the way of this hurricane and make possibly trouble for, again, first responders, right, or people who try to keep the community safe, right? So we decided to go for this area of Cedar Key to Horseshoe Beach, that at that time on the Tuesday did not even look to be kind of in the main area of the hurricane impact, but close enough that it would probably feel something. And so we had actually technical staff members from the NEER Rapid facility come over with equipment. We had our Center for Coastal Solutions staff get out with instruments. And so on Tuesday, people were flying in. On Wednesday, it was pretty much all hands on deck. We had multiple teams in the field deploying sensors at different places, as well as practically collecting pre-data. And for example, another really big achievement was my colleague Brian Phillips and his team were able to put a Sentinel tower also in Cedar Key, so out at the beach.
Oh, wow.
Right there. And so on Wednesday, everyone was out there. We were collecting this data, and the goal was on Wednesday evening, practically, let's go back to Gainesville, let's be out of the way. And some of the team members that flew in even kept traveling practically home to be completely out of the zone. So that made this deployment kind of unique. And to be honest, at that time, we didn't really know where this would be going. But then on Thursday, Helene took a twist to the right, and actually we were right in, not at the landfall spot, but practically on the right-hand side of the landfall, so in an area that experienced really high storm surge and had a lot of really devastating impacts. So we had 21 wave gauges deployed, and we got them all back. Shockingly, there was sometimes infrastructure and built environment items behind these that were completely destroyed or even gone.
Whoa.
And so that created like a really unique data set, as shocking as that was. And it is, as a researcher, I will say emotionally, it's quite hard, because while I'm happy that my wave gauge is recovered and has data, I feel terrible for the people who own the property that and just lost a lot, or in some cases everything, right? So it is quite challenging there. So then on a couple of days later, we recovered the sensors because the impact was so severe. We really wanted to make sure to give it a couple of days. We communicated with first responders in the area and police to make sure, again, that we can get in and we're not in anyone's way. And so we covered the sensors, we got everything back, we got an amazing data set, but we also collected an initial observations of the impacts, and they were just devastating, right? It was really shocking. And I mean, I do want to point out that that was also just like a small part of Helene. We all know that Helene just went up and created more and more disaster practically across multiple East Coast states, right? So we were just focused here on a small portion in Florida, and that was already really, really bad. And it did, with the data we had already collected, it made it, however, clear to us that it would make sense now to continue and collect more data, this really, really detailed data set, to, as terrible as these events are, but as a silver lining, to at least get the most data out of it and learn from it, and hopefully then improve community resilience in the future, right, and just protection mechanisms. So then, based on that, it works like that. Or what we did, we tried to identify what are the data products we need. We talked a little bit earlier about the typical data products we're looking for, and then practically finding people and experts who can provide this data, who are really ideally the top people who are available to come out and assist. But we also try to bring in new young folks, right? Because we are trying to build up also a community of people who can do this. Because honestly, as much as I do enjoy doing my research, these hurricanes are really hard emotionally as well as in work. And so we need more people who do what we are doing to collect this data, right? So we had a great team. We had up to, I think, more than 35 people in the field at a time.
Oh, wow.
And we had people from the whole country, from different institutions, federal agencies, from industry joining us again. We had different teams in different places trying to organize, making sure that we don't overrun certain property owners, because we had really, I want to point that out, a fantastic support from the community, despite them just having experienced such a, truly extreme event. Right. They were very supportive, allowed us access. A lot of our sensors and measurements were actually on private property, and people actually allowed us the access and responded, and it was all thanks to the community really there. And so we had a larger data collection effort planned, and then Milton came along, right? And targeted area again, hit a little bit further south. So we had to shift actually our data collection slightly to make sure we are not bringing more people into Florida or right into the area where Milton was projected to go. And we then, as soon as Milton had passed, we focused on the Cedar Key area to follow up on the Helene data collection. And then we actually sent a sub-team a little bit south to actually explore some of the impacts from Milton, and in particular, the 2 Barrier Island breaches that occurred. And so that led to another phase of data collection. Wow. Since we saw that, so we didn't really have the time to do that in that one sequence, but then we had team members come in again in November to collect data at those breaches. So it was a pretty intense fall, yes. In particular, if you think about, again, like going back to this idea that you cannot really plan for this like we usually plan for our projects.
Right. Well, and over the past, decade that you've been working on this, you've gathered expertise and experts and have kind of a playbook put together for certain things. But even with that, every event is different. So yes. how are you, as we're inviting in new researchers, young faculty, early career professionals, to maybe set up a new home base at their institution, LSU, or uh, wanting to get involved in these intense, time-sensitive, really fun outdoor work, what advice would you have for people wanting to get into this?
Yeah, so I think be proactive, right? Join NEER, join GEAR, join STEER, whatever is your closest to home discipline, right, or topic. I think the ears, they also communicate amongst each other, but I think joining these communities, seeing the chatter, right, the messages when there's mobilization, getting reports, seeing what others did, right? I think that is a really good first step. And then also being proactive about contacting people, right? Letting people know, hey, I would be really interested in collaborating with you, or if you just have the chance, if I would have the chance to join on one of these of mobilizations, or some, maybe it's not even a mobilization yet, maybe it's more helping remotely, right? I mean, it's there's a lot of people involved, and not everyone is just in the field, right? There's also people who are practically assisting us with information that can be a good first step. And to be honest, another really important one, I think that people are not really thinking about enough yet is, I mean, we are collecting this data. At least I see it, and I think most of us see it that way. We are collecting data for the research community. And so we're uploading the data and making it available through Design Safe, right? So the data is already there. So if someone really wants to get involved, I think one thing that is also a really great opportunity, look at the reports, look also at the data sets that are available. And how do these data sets actually match your research interests? This data is public. The Helene data is, for example, already public. Typically, all these teams try to publish the data very swiftly so that people can use it. Using the data, getting involved, showing interest in it, and then maybe starting collaborating, maybe with some team members or maybe with new people. I think that is also a really great opportunity to get involved that some people don't really think about yet. Because if you have already worked on some of these event data before, you probably have a more informed ability to contribute to a future team, right? So I think
Yes.
I think that, so if you're just thinking about an approach, if you're saying, hey, I just want to participate, sure, that's an option. But if you say something like, hey, I actually worked on Hurricane Harvey data that was published there, and I noticed this and that, and I thought it would be really great if we would also have this data, and I would like to contribute, that's also, and maybe even a more intriguing approach to get involved.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, all that data is already up there. It's free, publicly available. You don't have to be a PhD to access it. You can be an undergrad and be just, I heard about this really interesting concept in my class today. I wonder if there's any data I could apply that to.
That's
all
right.
sorts of things
And we
like
have
that.
And we have had undergrads joining us and helping in the field as well. And again, I encourage everyone to be proactive, reaching out. Typically, people like me, we are not annoyed about people reaching out. We are excited if people show interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to that end, how can people follow along with your research, get in touch with you maybe before hurricane season, which you got like 2 weeks if this goes live before then, or come to the Summer Institute if you're going to be there? How can folks get in touch and follow along with what you're up to?
Sure. I mean, if people see me at conferences, always swing by and say hi. I'm always happy to meet new people and chat with people about what they are doing.
And you always have good recommendations for where to find good coffee.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And obviously, just email me. It's nina.stark@ufl.edu. We also have a website that you can look at some of our other projects. Just reach out either via email, check out the website, or just start talking to me at a conference if you see me there or any other place. So it's pretty easy, and I'm actually pretty good with responding.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate your time, Nina. Thanks so much for that, and good luck in this upcoming hurricane season. And like you, hoping that you're just sipping Mai Tais on the beach or playing with your
That's
horses
right.
rather than
Yeah.
going to deploy. But we know you're going to be ready if that happens. So
Great.
thanks so
Thanks
much,
so
and
much.
keep up the great work.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks for having
Thanks for
me.
listening to today's episode of Design Safe Radio. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be listening to this on. It really helps people find our show. Thanks to our amazing sponsors, the National Science Foundation and the NERI Network Coordination Office, which is award number 2129782. Big thank you to Marty LaChance, our guest booker and topic researcher extraordinaire, and Raquel Ruiz, who is our video and audio editor. I'm your host and NERI Facility Scheduling and Operations Coordinator, Dan Zahner. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, stay resilient.